I grew up in what many would call an ordinary American family, but to me it was everything. The suburbs of Minneapolis weren't flashy, but they held a kind of quiet comfort I thought would last forever. My parents, both in their early 50s now, were the steady anchors of our household. My dad with his calm, rational tone, and my mom with her nurturing warmth that seemed to heal almost everything. Then there was my younger brother, only a year behind me, and my sister, who was 3 years younger than him. We weren't just siblings. We were teammates, rivals, partners in crime, and at times even confidants. Our house was a typical Midwestern home. A 2-story with beige siding, a basketball hoop nailed above the garage, and a backyard that backed into a patch of woods where we'd spend countless afternoons exploring as kids. The seasons marked the rhythm of our lives. Humid summers meant barbecues and baseball, while the harsh Minnesota winters meant snow forts and hot cocoa around the fireplace. Holidays were sacred. Thanksgiving was loud and crowded, with cousins running through the halls and my mom's famous pumpkin pie disappearing before it even cooled. Christmas mornings were filled with wrapping paper confetti, matching pajamas, and the kind of joy you think can't ever fade. I carried those traditions with me even when I left for the University of Minnesota. Home wasn't just a place. It was a heartbeat I returned to every weekend, almost religiously. While other students drifted further from their families, I clung to mine. It felt unbreakable, like we were bound together by something deeper than blood. And maybe that's why what happened later cut so deep, because I believed we were untouchable. During those years, my brother and I grew even closer. We were only 13 months apart, so we'd been mistaken for twins more times than I could count. We shared friends, inside jokes, and even clothes. He was the one I'd play basketball with at midnight, the one I'd trust with secrets I couldn't share with anyone else. My sister was the baby, the one we both tried to protect, even when she rolled her eyes at our big brother instincts. Looking back, it's almost cruel how close we all were, because betrayal stings most when it comes from the people you'd bet your life on. By sophomore year, I felt like life was finally opening up. That's when I met Stacy. She was 20, like me, studying psychology, with a laugh that filled the room and eyes that held stories I wanted to spend forever unraveling. Our relationship grew naturally, almost effortlessly. She fit into my world seamlessly, coming home with me for holidays, helping my mom set the table, and even laughing at my dad's old jokes. She became part of the family, and everyone seemed to adore her. It felt like I'd found not just a partner, but the missing piece of the life I was building. Those years were golden, the kind of years you think you'll remember fondly when you're old and gray. I was building a future in Minnesota, rooted in the soil of family, tradition, and love. By the time senior year rolled around, I was sure of one thing: Stacy was the one. So the following December, under a snowy sky that looked straight out of a movie, I got down on one knee and asked her to marry me. She said yes, her voice trembling with joy. And in that moment, I believed my life had reached its perfect arc. My family cheered, my sister hugged me tight, and my brother clapped me on the back with a grin that seemed genuine. Looking back, I wonder if it was. Our wedding was set for the following summer. Minnesota was going to be home not just for me, but for us. I had plans, big ones. We'd buy a house not far from my parents. We'd host Sunday dinners, we'd build the same kind of strong, loving family that I had grown up in. It all felt so certain. If you had told me then where I'd be now, sitting in a city hundreds of miles away, estranged from the very people who once defined my world, I would have laughed at your pessimism. I would have said, "You don't know my family. You don't know us. We're stronger than that." But the truth is, I didn't know them either. Or maybe I didn't want to see what was hiding beneath the surface. Sometimes the storm doesn't announce itself. It brews quietly in whispers and glances you don't notice. The betrayal doesn't arrive like lightning, it seeps in slowly. Like cracks in the foundation of a house you thought would stand forever. And when it finally strikes, it destroys everything in its path. For me, that storm was waiting just around the corner, and I had no idea my life was about to break in ways I couldn't imagine. I still remember the first time I saw her. It wasn't some dramatic movie moment. No lightning bolts. No cheesy slow motion, but it stuck with me all the same. I was a sophomore, dragging myself into a psychology class I hadn't even wanted to take. I walked in late, as usual, and the only open seat was next to a girl with auburn hair tied into a messy bun and an oversized hoodie. Swallowing her frame, she looked up, gave me the faintest smile, and went back to scribbling in her notebook. That was it. Just a smile, but it did something I couldn't shake. Over the next few weeks, that smile turned into small talk. Small talk into study sessions into late-night coffee runs. Before I knew it, Stacy wasn't just some girl in my psych class, she was my person. The one I texted first thing in the morning, and the last one I said goodnight to. She had this way of making the world feel less heavy. When I stressed about exams, she'd tease me until I laughed. When I doubted myself, she'd remind me of everything I had already overcome. She was steady, kind, and sharp in ways that made me want to be better. We'd sit in the campus library, her hand brushing against mine under the table, and I'd think, if this isn't love, then what is? Introducing her to my family felt natural. There was no hesitation, no second guessing. My mom adored her instantly, probably because Stacy offered to help wash dishes after her first dinner at our house. My dad liked her quiet confidence, the way she listened intently when he went off on tangents about sports or history. My sister thought Stacy was cooler than me, which was her way of showing approval. And my brother, well, he laughed with her easily. Too easily, I realize now. But at the time, I thought nothing of it. I was just happy everyone liked her. Holidays grew fuller with Stacy there. She fit so seamlessly it was like she had always belonged. At Thanksgiving, she and my mom would take over the kitchen, whispering and laughing over recipes while I hovered uselessly in the doorway. On Christmas Eve, she'd curl up on the couch between me and my sister, a mug of hot cocoa in hand, watching It's a Wonderful Life like she had been doing it with us for years. My family wasn't just my family anymore, it was ours. And that meant everything. By senior year, I knew I wanted to marry her. It wasn't some lightning strike epiphany. It was a slow build, a certainty that grew stronger with every passing day. I could picture her in my future, sitting across the table from me at breakfast, walking through Target picking out things we didn't need, holding our kids someday. The idea of forever with her didn't scare me. It grounded me, so I started saving. Quietly, carefully, putting money aside until I had enough for a ring. I remember the day I bought it. A cold December afternoon, the sky heavy with snow. The jeweler handed me a small velvet box, and my hands shook as I tucked it into my pocket. That night I couldn't sleep. The box sat on my desk, glowing in the dim light like it held the entire future inside it. The proposal wasn't extravagant. That wasn't us. I took her to the park where we had our first picnic. Snow blanketing the ground, the city lights twinkling in the distance. I was nervous, fumbling with words, my breath visible in the icy air. When I finally dropped to one knee and opened the box, her hands flew to her mouth. Her eyes filled with tears before I even got the words out. "Stacy," I managed, "will you marry me?" She nodded, unable to speak at first, then whispered a shaky, "Yes." The relief, the joy, it hit me all at once. We hugged, laughed, cried. She kept staring at the ring like she couldn't believe it was real. I couldn't believe it either. It wasn't just a proposal, it was a promise. A promise that we'd build a life together, that we'd always choose each other, no matter what. When we told my family, it felt like a celebration. My mom cried, hugging Stacy as though she had just gained another daughter. My dad shook my hand, then pulled me into one of those rare hugs that said more than words ever could. My sister squealed, already talking about bridesmaid dresses. And my brother. He smiled, clapped me on the back, and joked about throwing me a bachelor party. Looking back, I can't tell if that smile hid something darker. At the time, though, I was blind to anything but happiness. We set a date for the following summer. The months ahead filled with planning, venue tours, cake tastings, guest lists that seemed impossible to finalize. Stacy was radiant, glowing with excitement, already calling my parents mom and dad without hesitation. We'd stay up late in our shared apartment, sketching out seating charts and talking about honeymoon destinations. Life felt full, overflowing even. Minnesota had never felt more like home. Not just because it was where I was from, but because it was where I was building a future I thought was unshakable. But the thing about unshakable foundations is that sometimes they crack without you noticing. Sometimes the laughter hides the lies. Sometimes the love you think will last forever is already slipping through your fingers. I didn't see it then. I couldn't. To me, the world was perfect. The woman I loved had said yes, my family supported us, and the future seemed like something out of a storybook. But stories don't stay perfect forever, and mine was about to turn into a nightmare. Love makes you blind. I used to think that was just something people said after a breakup. A cliche for the brokenhearted. But no, it's real. When you love someone, when you trust someone, you don't look for cracks. You don't want to. And that's why I didn't see it coming. It started small. Little things that barely registered in my mind at the time. Stacy laughing harder at my brother's jokes than mine. The way they exchanged glances during family dinners. Too quick to mean anything. Or so I told myself. He'd drop by our apartment when I wasn't home, claiming he was just in the neighborhood. Sometimes, I'd come back to find them on the couch watching a movie. Stacy curled up in her blanket. My brother sprawled beside her like he belonged there. I didn't question it. Why would I? This was my brother, my blood. The person who knew me better than anyone else in the world. If there was one person I thought I could trust, it was him. But trust is fragile, and mine was about to shatter. The night it all fell apart was so ordinary it's almost insulting. I had been swamped with work, staying late at the campus library to finish a project. When I finally drove home, snow was falling in heavy sheets. The roads quiet, the kind of night that makes you want nothing more than to curl up with the person you love. I remember smiling, thinking Stacy would be waiting for me. Maybe already in bed, the ring I gave her glinting softly in the lamplight, but when I opened the apartment door, the smile froze on my face. The lights were dim. Music played softly in the background. And there they were, my brother and Stacy, so close, so intimate, so wrong. For a moment, my brain refused to process it. My body went numb, like time itself had stopped. They looked up, eyes wide with the kind of guilt you can't hide. Not even if you tried. Stacy scrambled to cover herself, stammering my name. My brother stood there, frozen, his face pale, his mouth opening and closing with no words coming out. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could do was stand there, staring, while the world I had built came crashing down around me. Tell me this isn't real, I finally whispered. My voice didn't even sound like mine. It was broken, hollow, but the silence that followed told me everything gave out. My chest burned, not with anger at first, but with disbelief. This is my fiancé. This is my brother. The two people I loved most in this world had chosen each other in the most devastating way possible. Stacy began crying, trying to explain, but every word was a knife. It just happened. We didn't mean to. We didn't want to hurt you. Didn't mean to. Didn't want to hurt me. Every stolen glance, every laugh, every moment they shared behind my back, they were choices. Choices that cut deeper than any blade could. My brother finally spoke, his voice low, ashamed. I'm sorry. I didn't plan this. But I didn't hear an apology. I heard betrayal. The boy who used to race bikes with me down the street, who shared secrets with me under the covers with a flashlight, who swore we'd always have each other's backs, he was gone. Or maybe he had been gone for a while and I just hadn't seen it. I don't remember much after that. My body went into autopilot. I stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. The freezing night air hit me, but it didn't cool the fire raging in my chest. I drove aimlessly, my vision blurred with tears, my hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. How do you even begin to process something like that? How do you take the image of your fiancé and your brother together and erase it from your mind? You don't. It sears into you, burns itself into your memory so deeply you'll never forget. When I finally returned home the next morning, the apartment was empty. Stacy was gone. My brother had disappeared too. The silence was deafening. The ring sat on the nightstand where she had left it. A cruel reminder of everything I had lost. Telling my parents was worse than living through it. My mom wept like her heart had been ripped out. My dad grew quiet, retreating into himself in a way I had never seen before. My sister screamed at my brother, called him every name under the sun. But even her anger couldn't undo the damage. The family that had once been my anchor now felt like a battlefield. Every memory tainted, every bond fractured. Holidays became unbearable. My mom tried to pretend we could still gather around the table like before. But there was always an empty chair, an unspoken tension that no amount of turkey or pumpkin pie could cover up. I tried to hate Stacy, God knows I wanted to. But hate doesn't erase love, it just twists it. Every memory of her smile, her laugh, her touch was now a weapon. The girl I thought I would spend forever with had chosen my own brother instead. That kind of wound doesn't heal. It just scars. And my brother. My brother was dead to me. Not literally, but in every way that mattered. Blood no longer meant loyalty. Family no longer meant safety. The bond we had built since childhood had been burned to ash. Friends told me to move on. My parents told me to forgive. But forgiveness felt impossible. How do you forgive the people who destroyed your future? Who took the life you dreamed of and smashed it into pieces? I stopped going home on weekends. I stopped answering my brother's calls. I packed my things and moved into a smaller apartment. One that didn't hold her scent in the sheets or her laughter in the walls. But no matter where I went, the betrayal followed me. In the quiet of the night, when everything else faded, their faces haunted me. The memory of that night replayed over and over until I wanted to tear it out of my head. It was in that darkness that the thought first came to me. Maybe I couldn't stay here. Not in this city. Not in this state. Not in this life that held too many ghosts. Minnesota had been... The weeks after the betrayal blurred together like a foggy winter morning. I walked through life with a hollow chest, going through motions but feeling nothing. Work became my only escape. Numbers, meetings, deadlines, they were clean, sharp, and predictable. Unlike love, unlike family, but even work couldn't fully protect me. Every time my phone buzzed, I half expected it to be Stacy, or worse, my brother. I blocked them both, but my imagination kept feeding me scenarios. Would they show up at my door holding hands? Would they try to explain again? Would they ask me to forgive them? The thought made me sick. For a while, I thought my parents had my back. After all, when the truth came out, they banned my brother from family dinners. My sister barely spoke to him. For once, I wasn't alone in my anger. But like all fragile things, that solidarity didn't last. By November, cracks had spread through the family like spiderwebs on glass. My mom's voice trembled every time she called, begging me to come home for Thanksgiving. It's not about them, she said. It's about all of us being together. But I knew what she really meant. It was about them. It was always about them, and sure enough, when I finally caved and drove home, I walked into the lion's den. The moment I stepped through the door, I knew. Stacy was there. My brother was there. Their hands weren't touching. But the space between them was too familiar, too comfortable. My aunt welcomed me like nothing was wrong. My sister's eyes darted away, red and wet from crying. Then came my parents. My mom held my hand, her eyes pleading. My dad's voice was steady, almost rehearsed. What they did was wrong. But you're all my children. I can't lose either of you. It felt like the floor had vanished beneath me. For a second, I just stared at them, waiting for the punchline. Waiting for them to say this was all some cruel joke, that they were on my side, that they understood, but no. They wanted me to forgive, to smile and share pumpkin pie with the man who stole my future and the woman who ripped out my heart. Do you agree with this? I asked my sister. Tears welled in her eyes. She nodded, turned to my father. You too? Yes, he said firmly, as if he had already made peace with it, and that was it. The nail in the coffin. I stood up, the chair scraping across the hardwood floor. My legs shook, but my voice was steady. Then you've already chosen. I left. I didn't take a plate, didn't say I left. I didn't take a plate, didn't say goodbye, didn't look back. That night, while my family carved turkey and toasted with wine, I sat alone in a McDonald's parking lot, scarfing down a greasy burger under fluorescent lights. The fries were cold, the soda flat, but at least it was honest. No one here was pretending. Betrayal could be patched with forgiveness somewhere, between the soggy fries and the hollow ache in my chest. A decision crystallized. I was done. With Stacy, with my brother, with my family. They weren't my family anymore. A week later, my boss called me into his office. "I've been thinking," he said. "Chicago needs strong leadership. It's messy, but I trust you." At first I hesitated. Chicago was a different world, louder, bigger, more chaotic than quiet Minnesota. I had never planned on leaving, but maybe that was exactly why I should. "Yes," I said. The word left my mouth before I had fully processed it, but as soon as I said it, I felt lighter. For the first time in months, I felt like I had a choice. The plan was to move after Christmas, but the idea of one more holiday under my parents' roof was unbearable. I pushed my boss for an earlier start, and he agreed. Chicago would have me in December. I didn't tell my family. Didn't owe them that. Instead, I called my landlord, who was happy to let me move in early. I packed my belongings into boxes, each one a little lighter than the last. Clothes, books, photos, though I left most of Stacy behind. No point in dragging ghosts to a new city. On December 15th, I loaded my car with what little I had and drove east. The snow followed me, swirling across the highway, like a curtain closing on one, life and opening on another. When the skyline of Chicago finally came into view, I pulled over just to stare at it. The city glittered in the winter night, alive with energy, a beast of steel and glass daring me to try again. And for the first time since that April night, I smiled. Not a forced smile, not a mask, a real one. I didn't tell my family where I was. I blocked their numbers, deleted their emails, cut every thread that tied me back to them. I wanted a clean slate, a chance to rebuild without the shadows of betrayal looming over me. But secrets don't stay buried forever. Weeks later, a message slipped through. A new Instagram account, my mom's, I guessed. The words were familiar, heavy with guilt. "Why would you move without telling us? The family misses you. We love you. Please come home for Christmas." For a moment, I almost replied. Almost let myself believe that maybe things could be different. But then I remembered the Thanksgiving table. My parents begging me to forgive. My sister nodding through tears. I remembered the empty feeling in my chest as I realized no one was on my side. I typed back only one line. "You only have one son now." Then I blocked the account, locked down my social media, and sat in my empty Chicago apartment, the city buzzing outside my window. I had no... But maybe that wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning. Because Chicago wasn't just a city, it was a second chance, and I wasn't going to waste time. Chicago felt different from the moment I arrived. The air was sharper, colder, biting through my coat as if to remind me that nothing here would be easy. But that was exactly what I wanted. Easy was gone. Familiar was gone. What I needed now was new. My first few days were a blur of unpacking boxes, setting up furniture that barely filled the apartment, and wandering through the city streets like a ghost haunting someone else's life. Skyscrapers towered over me, trains roared above, and people moved fast, heads down, chasing their own dreams. Nobody knew me here. Nobody cared. And strangely, that was freedom. Work helped anchor me. The Chicago office was, as my boss warned, a mess. Low morale, poor leadership, deadlines slipping. But where most people saw chaos, I saw a challenge. Something to build, something that depended on me. I threw myself into it with everything I had. Early mornings, late nights, endless strategy meetings. The harder I worked, the less I thought about Minnesota, about Stacy, about the brother who wasn't my brother anymore. Still, loneliness clung to me. After work, the apartment echoed with silence. No family dinners, no laughter, no familiar voices. Just the hum of the fridge and the faint sounds of the city outside. Sometimes I'd scroll through my phone, tempted to unblock my mother's number, tempted to see if anyone had tried again. But then I'd hear my father's firm voice in my head. "You need to forgive," and I'd remember why I left. And so, I built something else. I started running along Lake Michigan in the mornings, the icy wind stinging my face, the water stretching out like an endless horizon. At first it was torture. My body protested, my breath came in ragged gasps. But each day, it got easier, stronger, like I was outrunning the ghosts that tried to follow me. One morning, I ran past a group of strangers stretching by the water. They waved me over, invited me to join their running club. I hesitated. Trust didn't come easy anymore. But something inside me whispered, "Say yes." That yes changed everything. Suddenly my days weren't just work and silence. They were runs with new friends. Coffee afterward, long talks about nothing and everything. Chicago wasn't just a city anymore. It was becoming a community. Slowly I began to laugh again. To trust again. Not fully, not recklessly, but enough. Enough to feel human. But the shadows of my past weren't gone. Some nights the loneliness crept in like a thief. I'd dream of Thanksgiving, of my sister's tearful nod, my father's firm voice, my mother's pleading eyes. I'd wake up with the ache of loss pressing down on my chest. Because no matter how much I told myself I had no family, a part of me still mourned them. I wanted to erase it, to start over completely, so I began the process of changing my last name. It felt dramatic, maybe even cruel, but necessary. A symbolic rebirth, shedding the weight of betrayal, carving out a future that was mine alone. And that's when I realized the truth. Leaving my family behind wasn't just an escape, it was survival. Betrayal had burned down the life I thought I wanted, but in the ashes I had found something unexpected: freedom. A chance to write my own story, not one defined by what they did to me, but by what I chose to do next. I don't know if I'll ever see my family again. Maybe time will soften the edges of anger. Maybe one day forgiveness will find its way in. Or maybe not. Maybe this is the end of that chapter, and that's okay. Because here in Chicago, I am not their son. Not the betrayed fiancé, not the broken man. I am simply me. And for the first time in my life, that feels like an